you're welcome to get started whenever you're ready.
Hey, folks, welcome. This is the Picard Panel. I don't know why I'm taking force of habit, I guess. Sorry, Sean.
No, you're fine. I mean, yeah, it is the Picard Panel. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about some of the other new Trek stuff, maybe before we actually get into Picard, because there's been some news that's come out over the last week or so. Like yesterday, they announced that the Nickelodeon show that we've been hearing about forever is actually going to be called Star Trek Prodigy. And all we really know about it is that it's about a lawless group of teenagers and they use an abandoned starship to search for adventure. So it kind of sounds like you remember the old movie Space Camp?
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like that, but with a Star Trek style starship.
I saw that got the name finally. I didn't have a chance to look it up, and also Lower Decks has gotten a video out, a preview out for August 1st, I believe it is.
August 6th.
August 6th.
Yeah. And they actually released the first scene. Like, we had a trailer a week or so ago, but this week they released the first scene from the first episode of Lower Decks. Did you guys watch that?
Haven't seen that yet.
No, I saw it was out there. I just haven't watched it yet.
It's very reminiscent of Rick and Morty. Just judging by that one scene, it doesn't look like it's not going to be Rick and Morty style, as in, with a lot of dirty comedy and stuff like that. But we see someone's leg almost get amputated by a bat left in the very first scene. So, and it's played up as comedy. So that tells you where they may be willing to go as the show progresses. It's going to be interesting.
We heard anything more about possibility for the fourth Star Trek? I know Quentin Tarantino's name was bopping in and out of there, and there's not much news about any production going on at the moment due to COVID. But where did they leave it finally?
Quentin Tarantino has basically said that it's not going to happen with him. The last that I heard, there was another director, or the guy that did what was that show that came on FX? That Marvel show that came on FX? Legion? Was it Legion?
There was Legion. There was a couple of, but yeah, Legion.
So it was the guy that created that show. I think he's next in line to do something, either write or direct or something. But
most of it's for us to see from all that I've read. Chris Pine and, of course, Chris Hemsworth was supposed to come and reprise the George Kirk thing. That is totally out. Chris Pine, because he's got a contract, he wants to stick to the contract, and Paramount says they can't afford him. And that's, but you know how that works. If they could possibly do something for a charity of Chris Pine's, and he'll do it. But right now, if it comes, it's probably going to be another reboot.
There's a chance that Viacom will end up owning Paramount, or a lot of the Paramount properties. That's been in the air for a little bit with everybody, with CBS Viacom taking over, because CBS would like to fill out their All Access roster, because as nice as it is, I love the new Twilight Zone. I like Discovery. And of course there's Picard on there, which I'll just kind of gloss over and go on about. But they need more heavy hitters in that, and the Paramount library would give them access to that. They'd be able, if they got to stream the Paramount library, they could stream the Indiana Jones movies, which Disney Plus currently can't due to the contract releases.
I thought they already had some of the Indiana Jones movies on CBS.
On CBS, they probably do. I mean, they're interchangeable. They just don't officially own Paramount.
Well, yeah, but CBS is going to do anything they can to keep that, because especially with COVID, I think they've worked a little more to get a few more movies on. I went through the movies a month back, and they had several different ones. I was surprised that they were up there. So
I think they even have The Godfather on there. Is that, yeah, that's All Access.
yeah.
Yeah, Godfather and Godfather 2.
So,
Well, Picard. Clearly, Mark Adam loved it. Sean?
I have been on record. Rick, are you there?
Hi, can you see me?
I can
Hi,
see you.
Rick.
I can hear you too. There you are.
Okay.
Okay.
So whatever you just sent me, send that to Scott.
I did.
Okay.
Okay. So we were just kind of talking a little bit about Lower Decks. We're going to start talking about Picard here a little bit now.
That was the funniest minute and a half I've seen in years. I'm not kidding. Usually I'm not that a little clip is usually all right. That intrigue. I was literally laughing. I'm so excited about this show. I'm trying to turn down my volume.
Which
here.
which is funny because you're not a Rick and Morty fan.
Yeah, but that's not. I mean, we've okay. I am. It's not that I'm not a Rick and Morty fan. I can't watch the show to find out if I am or not because the drooling grosses me out too much.
I agree with that. That was what grossed me out a lot too on Rick and Morty. It had some interesting content, but I think I only got through 4 episodes before I finally.
I really don't think. I think they've dialed that back. He doesn't do that as much now as he.
It doesn't matter. It's still there.
Yeah,
and
he still
you know
does.
everybody's got one thing that they that just cockroaches or spiders or something that they just can't get over. And with me, it's drooling and it's there and it's gross. It's like the movie 12 Monkeys. That's the only thing I remember from that movie.
Yeah.
Drooling
was Bruce Willis drooling all over the place, and I will never ever watch it again.
We keep making the Rick and Morty comparisons. The creative team's not behind it. You just mean it looks like the same animation style.
No, the showrunner of
Justin
Rick
Roiland?
and Morty. No, it's McMahon. Is that his name? McMahon.
Oh, okay. Showrunner, not
Mike McMahon was the writer and co-creator of Rick and Morty.
Yeah,
and showrunner for Lower Decks.
Yeah. So
okay, but it's not Roiland and Harmon.
No.
Okay,
Right.
Good. Yeah.
No, but there is a direct connection.
And a lot of the animation style looks pretty similar too.
Yeah.
From what I've seen so far. Okay, so Picard. Now, I will say that myself and Rick and Scott have talked about Picard ad nauseum because we do a weekly breakdown of every episode. So, people that listen to the Star Trek All Access podcast may have heard our opinion many times, but I do want to get into a conversation with you guys about it. So, Stan, what did you think of Picard overall?
I didn't like it. Didn't feel like Star Trek to me. Let me straightforward. The first episode, maybe the first 2 episodes, I was, and I'm not doing this as a pun, I was engaged. I was there. I liked it. I liked how they were going to carry this off. I was concerned because as much as I love Patrick Stewart, he seemed a little tired. Almost like, maybe you should sit down, sir. Or and along those lines. But the way they handled the situation in the first 2 episodes, I definitely liked. Then by the time we start the quest, no, it felt like something completely different to me. And at no time, other than knowing that this was Picard, I had no other reference points. I wasn't big on Riker and Troy showing up and the capacity they did, almost as if to announce possible spinoff. Here's the possibility for this. And I definitely did not. They had the actors. I just don't know. I just don't know where it fell apart. The crew, the situations, the Vegas planet was the worst for me. Him wearing the iPad. That was a bad holodeck episode to me.
Yeah.
What I take away positive from it is I think if they want to do something like this, if they want to do something that's Star Trek branded but not Star Trek philosophy, 7 of 9 being a Ranger is the prime situation right there. having her go out and be a vigilante running loose in the galaxy, yeah, in the Star Trek universe, yeah, I'm all for that, and not just for the reasons of, oh, it's Jerry Ryan, 7 of 9, and you know, not for any reasons other than I think that the Star Trek universe would benefit from a point of view character being similar along the lines of an outlaw, for lack of a better term there. That sort of vigilantism, riding the wild frontier, running into unexpected situations. I think we could do more than that than revisiting the Romulans and the Klingons repeatedly.
Yeah, but it would be probably good, because that's sort of what Firefly was. And because you had a utopian society and was trying to get the outer edges under thumb. And it would be interesting to see 7 and 9, because she's not Federation. She has seen what the Federation has done. She has seen what the Borg has done. She comes from a Borg culture. And it's one thing I really enjoyed was 7 and 9's character in this. In her, she has grown from that character from Voyager, and in a sense has her own identity from the Borg, and is working to do what to liberate people from the Borg and to accept the Borg for who they are, to get them back into somewhat sense of their own freedom.
Yeah, I wanted something more substantial for that justified calling out Patrick Stewart.
I agree.
I wanted something heavy, and I wanted something character driven, and I don't think they ever. The opening to it, the opening credits, the credit scene, that was way more involved than the actual plot turned out to be. You know, the pieces of Picard and everything. It really was, to me. There was a lot of thought and effort that went into that opening sequence, and that got me psyched up even more for something I don't feel they necessarily delivered on.
Well, partly they didn't deliver, partly they did. The character arc of this was a man who, in a sense, did his part for king and country, and in the end, felt that the country needed to still do some more that needed to be done, and the country turned their back on him. And he was like, okay, and sort of like, what do I do? And him dealing with that, he's also still PTSD'd from the Borg situation, which, of course, that's part of Jerry Ryan's, 7 of 9's problem, is she's PTSD'd from her being a Borg and trying to figure out where her place in society is. This man has, for a number of years, been a Federation officer holding the standard for the Federation. And that standard has all of a sudden has moved back from where it's been in the forefront. And here's a man that doesn't know what to do with himself.
And that was largely the first 2 episodes, and then we moved on to this sequence of events with the cyber. If they focused on that, if they focused on the contention of Captain Picard or retired Admiral Picard with the current Starfleet, Starfleet chapters that was running everything, I would have been way more a participant in it than the MacGuffin of the cyber attack from another dimension coming through. That's a character piece that Patrick Stewart could really, engage in, and just get to it. The substance wasn't there for me. Some of the things that I thought they should have touched on, or I would have liked to have seen them touch on, they didn't.
And I'm hoping that they're spreading some of that out. We're going to see more. I will admit that the closer that we got to the end, I didn't like the whole idea of the entire universe is at stake because of this other dimension AI or something like that. Kristen, you can unmute Joe. I know Joe does not like being an audience member. He likes to talk. Rick,
Just
Scott, what about
me.
you guys?
Come on. What? Sheesh. I agree with a lot of what Stan and Mark Adam were talking about, but I think I tried maybe too hard to look for the good parts. I loved the episode with Riker and Troy because, and I think I mentioned, Sean, you were not on this panel. I was on a panel with Stan and Mark Adam a little bit earlier yesterday, and they said when the show was about to start, when they were working on it, they said, well, this is not going to be a nostalgia show. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch, I want to come back to the Next Generation timeline. And that's what they did. And then promptly went, okay, here's a bunch of new people that we want you to care about. And some of them, but most of them,
Well, we got introduced to a lot of people that they didn't necessarily know what to do with. Like, what was the Romulan character's name that was a lot like
exactly.
a Lord of the Rings?
Exactly.
Derek.
Yeah,
that's the point. Exactly.
Let's put him in here
Eleanor.
and then forget what we want to do with him. Yeah.
Eleanor.
I think the problem with Picard. Now, I love the show. You know,
me
I
too,
have,
me too.
and and as Sean, as you said, on several different occasions, I have gone on and on and on and on about it. I do disagree that with the statement that they abandoned the Star Trek philosophy, but that may be a deeper conversation later on. But just as an overview, I think, you know, kind of like what you said, Joe. They were like, this is not going to be, you know, we're not going backwards. Patrick Stewart doesn't want to rehash what we've already done, and then they proceeded to, well, guess who else is going to be on the show next week that you know from before, and you know, all of these callbacks. On the one hand, that's, you know, they said they're going to do this and then they don't. On the other hand, I found both with the beginning of Discovery and with the beginning of Picard, I don't mind being pandered to as a 56-year-old Star Trek fan, as long as they get it out of their system now. You know, every Star Trek show, with the exception of TOS, has had a rocky first season. And I don't know why we expect new Trek, and I'm not using NU fucking hyphen Trek. Oh, sorry. Are we supposed to behave ourselves? I apologize. This is new as an NEW. Oh, sorry. Sorry, folks. Look it up. It's in the OED.
As long as you don't say words loud.
New Trek as in NEW space Trek. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. Oh crap! I lost my train of thought because I misbehaved myself. But you know,
your first seasons.
Oh yeah, first seasons are always kind of rough. And I don't know why people keep expecting that to change. You know, Discovery season 1 had some stuff I really liked, some stuff I really hated, but we're also seeing a new paradigm in Star Trek. We're seeing them shift from episodic to these long story arcs that, you know, that the producers seem to think that's what people want now. I'm not entirely sold on that, and I don't think the writers are either, because I'm not sure they know how yet to write a 15-episode long story arc. Because if you look at Picard, they kind of tried to do that, but then tried to shove everything into the last 2 episodes, and it didn't really quite stick the landing all that well. But I like the characters. I like the settings. And one other thing about Star Trek that I think maybe being a little older gives you a little bit more of a perspective on this. Star Trek has changed its tone with every reincarnation, with every iteration. You know, TOS was very much a product of the 60s. TAS was TAS. You know, it was pretty much just the same as TOS. Then, you know, we had 15 years, and then TNG came out. And TNG was a complete paradigmatic shift from TOS. And I think a lot of people forget that because they grew up with TNG and they just think, oh, well, TNG is what Star Trek is or what it should be. But TNG was a very, I was one of those people that found that to be a very hard pill to swallow. And it took 3 seasons for TNG to bring me on board. Then we had DS9. Sorry?
I started to say, Rick, I didn't forget that at all. But given the situation in 1987, it was all we had.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wanted to support it. But yeah, the difference between TOS and TNG, night and day, I agree.
Yeah, and it's every much as different from, Voyager or Voyager to Discovery. Enterprise is its own entity, but still, there are some areas that are darker than I would like Star Trek to get to. The whole Icheb I thing was probably way unnecessary. But we also have to remember that this is, as Gene Roddenberry put, I saw it in an old document. Roddenberry put it, TV is designed to sell toothpaste. So there's this big tug of war between creative and marketing, and so sometimes we have to just kind of go, all right, this is some producer's idea of how to bring, get the decontamination gel because the dude writing the checks wants to see someone smearing stuff onto Paul. And I don't think I don't think Picard went that bad.
But I think we also have to look at the point. Okay, Star Trek is over 50 years old, and things have changed because of Star Trek. We have flip phones nowadays. Well, they're even gone. Our telephones are tricorders almost to the point. So
Mark Adam has a flip phone.
Okay.
Not anymore. I used to have one. I did have a flip phone at one point, but my phone, I don't. I have the tricorder phone. But we've got it, and I think this is one thing as Star Trek fans we have got to realize that Star Trek has to be somewhat of the time. And right now we are in a somewhat turmoil situation of where are we going? And that's what I think Picard is looking at. Are we going to continue with what the Federation is, or do we need to come up with a better system? And I think that's one of the things, because we've had contention presidential elections. We've had the 2 Desert Storm, and I can't remember the one that was.
There was a couple of wars, yeah.
Yeah, there's been a couple.
Yeah, we
wars.
don't have to.
Yeah, there's been a couple wars we've done. We're now, of course, Picard was before the pandemic, but we're now in a pandemic. I think this will. I think if the writers continue, we may even see in later seasons how they address the pandemic. So I wish it was a little more brighter. I always think that Star Trek should be a little utopian in nature, not this dystopia. And that's the one problem I have with what I had with Enterprise and I have with Discovery. It's dystopia. Picard is somewhat the same thing. There are certain things I like about Picard, but the one thing I don't like is the dystopia. They've destroyed the Romulan Empire, and they're they're showing the pieces of what this destroyed empire is doing. So,
let me address some of because we've got some comments in the chat. So
it's mostly just Rhett. Nobody needs to.
Well, Alan said Firefly's first season was rough, but the later seasons were much better.
I agree.
And then, of course, Rhett says that the dam is burst. If everyone doesn't pepper their language with profanity, he's out.
Not treble fur.
So, Scott, what about you? You want to chime in?
Well, before going into the general thoughts on Picard, something that I don't think I really had this thought until a moment ago when Mark Adam was talking about some of the newer Trek series seeming very dystopian. Whereas I don't necessarily agree that Picard was much of a dystopian view. I've heard a lot of people describe Discovery as fairly dystopian, and I can sort of agree with it to an extent. And just now I started wondering to myself, would I or many other people change that opinion and find it to be less gloomy, less grim, less dystopian if the production team had made things brighter? If the bridge of Discovery were a bright, well-lit beige like Enterprise D, would everything seem as grim as it really was? And I know as that comes out of my mouth, it seems a little bit reductive, but I think it's a symptom of the issue. Discovery is being made with a modern, 20 teens, 21st century sensibility. This is how television is done. It's sleek, it's shiny, it's dark with a lot of bright accents. And that's not how Star Trek was made in the past. And I wonder if the new sleek, darker look is impacting its tone more than people think. I don't really have an answer for that. That's just a thought exercise that I had. But moving on to Picard, I'm agreeing with most of what everyone is saying. I love the first season, even though it wasn't perfect. There were plenty of things I didn't like. I found myself wishing that they had picked either the android civil rights storyline or, excuse me, the Borg revisited storyline. I think putting both of them plus everything else that they had in the season was a little bit much, especially for a first round. You want to keep it lean and focus on one story rather than trying to tell a few stories at the same time. And yeah, as we got closer to the end of the season, things started to get a little shaky. And I don't think, considering the amount of time that is needed in post-production for a show like this, by the time the first episode hit CBS All Access, they were done making everything. Maybe they weren't finished with some of the final effects touches on the last couple episodes, but everything was filmed. However, I suspect that by the time they started filming episode 1, they hadn't written, or at least they hadn't finished writing the end of the season.
I don't even believe they had gotten through the halfway marker on the season. I agree with you about it. Wouldn't have been great if they had just focused on the android civil rights situation in and around what happened to the shipyards and the Federation's response to that, because that's where the Federation really does become divergent from what we know as Federation principles and all. We could have explored that without necessarily having to ever leave Earth, or at least go too far and, jump to Vegas Planet, go visit Will Riker and all of this stuff. That is core Star Trek material right there. And the timing on it would have been uncanny if they had just taken that situation. But it was like they had a checklist, and after those first 2 episodes, it was a scramble to get everything on that checklist off. I wanted more of the 2 Romulans that Picard had befriended Picard and was living at his vineyard as well. I mean, that's an interesting background story they have.
I think
Why
you're going to get more of them
drop
too.
in and then hardly mention them again?
Yeah, I mean, I would have easily traded them for Narek. I mean,
you got to read the
especially
comics.
when he
You gotta
I
read-
did.
You got to read the comics if you want more of them.
Oh,
especially
yeah, I
when
read those.
Picard gets
Yeah.
back to his vineyard and says, "By the way, I'm not human anymore." They're like, "What?"
Yeah. Well, you see that the whole ending to that kind of was like a sellout. We're saving you, but we're not all the way saving you where you're more than what you once were, or will live longer. You'll live your allotted amount of time. And
Is that any different than the end of Star Trek 3, though?
Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock,
Yes.
it's
We're going to kill a character, but then we're going to bring him back, but we need to find some tortured logic reason why he's still 65 years old.
I bought that more given my age at that point than I do this.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, because
that's set in concrete with me, whereas this is not, and it doesn't feel like Picard. And besides that, you got a lot more leeway because Spock is Vulcan, i.e. alien, and he was always set up to do things we couldn't. Vulcan net pinch, the mind meld. So, okay, this is in his culture. This is something, it seems like something the Vulcans would do, as opposed to...
No, I'm talking about the Genesis regeneration of Spock and how the planet was aging so that we could bring Nimoy back, but we didn't have to, find some way to say, why is this brand new Spock still 55 years old?
Given Genesis was set up in Star Trek II, and Spock died at the end of Star Trek II, and while they knew they wanted an out to bring Nimoy back in case he changed his mind, they didn't fully have it formulated how they were going to get out. It fit nicely. And I mean, we can, is Star Trek 3 the best of the Star Trek? No, not really. It's enjoyable, and I love Christopher Lloyd in it, and it's got some of the best Kirk lines, but overall, it's not Star Trek 2, and it's not Star Trek 4. But again, I buy that easier than I buy let's put Picard in a cybernetic body that lives out his age cycle.
Live
longer.
That's the thing.
Do
When I look at this, is like, Picard basically died, and they put him in a body so that he could live another 10 years, maybe.
Yeah,
something like
if
that.
According to 24th/25th century health standards, I
He
guess
could make it to like 130.
He's probably got like another 40 years. But the trick of it is
Starfleet medical manual. They say humans lived 135 to 150 years. So Picard right now is 90 years old. So he's got another 40 years where this disease is going to kill him off in about 2 years.
Let me just clarify. I was not trying to criticize anything, and I wasn't saying that the choice for Nimoy in Star Trek 3 was right or the choice in Picard was right. I'm just saying a lot of the things that people are giving Picard crap about are stuff that's been done before. It was the same with Discovery. Everybody lost their minds about Voq. I just watched Apocalypse Rising, the DS9 episode where everybody got turned into Klingons.
Yeah.
So there is precedent for this stuff, is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, definitely. I enjoyed Discovery a great deal more than I did Picard because Discovery, again, the beginning of the first season, look, I felt they found their way about the 5th or 6th episode, or at least they got rolling right around then in the first season, because I watched the first 4 or 5 episodes and I thought, I'm never watching this again. Then later, as Picard came out, I thought, okay, I'm on CBS Access. I'll go ahead and watch all of Discovery. And I ended up very much enjoying it because there's no Picard in it. Everybody we're introduced to is new. Everybody, anybody could die at any moment. Anything could happen to any one of them. You can make any excuse for any of them you want because it's not Kirk, it's not Spock, it's not Picard, and it's not Geordi. And so, yeah, I'm enjoying the anything could go situation in Discovery much more than I do them trotting out Captain Picard and just not living up. We had kind of a holodeck data adventure there for the second half of the Picard series, and he deserved more. That line of the franchise deserves more.
I agree. And to me, the whole Picard thing, and I said this last night, I'm going to say it again, is Picard switching bodies is just X-Men 3, because Xavier died in that, and he was put into a body that did not have a conscience with it.
Yes, and then they immediately wrote X-Men 3 out of all continuity.
Yeah, they did.
So maybe they'll write Picard out of continuity.
Yes, the next movie went back and immediately retconned everything.
Never mind.
Well, I've been kind of toying around with the idea that maybe at the end of this series, 3 or 4 seasons in or whatever, we'll have an episode where Q will show up, and he'll turn Picard back into a real boy.
I don't know if I want to see old. I'd like that, but I don't want to see old Q. I don't want them to have to explain why Q is aged.
Well, he's always mimicked Picard. He's always wore Picard's uniforms and things like that. So if Picard is older,
Yeah,
It'll be a
It'll make
lot
him so.
easier. It'll be a lot easier to explain Q looking older because it would be him either A, respecting, or B, needling Picard for looking older. As looks like you're getting older, mon capitaine. Like, and then he'll just make himself look older. That makes more sense than what they did at the end of the season with putting him in an old golem rather than a young body. Now, Rick had pointed out that they did something similar in Star Trek 3 with putting Spock in a body that was the same age as the old one was when it died. I can at least run with that because the story that they wrote had the body aging along with the planet, and by the time they got him off the planet and got him back to Vulcan, got it set up, the body had aged that far. Now in Picard, they made a choice to give him an old body when there was no reason to. They could have made a young body, put him into it, and if he had complained, I said, "What is this young body? Why do I have to be half the age with no joint pain and no weak muscles and no arthritis? What are you doing to me?" They would have said, "Okay, fine, we'll make you old," and they could have changed the body. But they just decided, you know what? We thought you'd be more comfortable in an uncomfortable body, and that doesn't work. That the reasoning doesn't work. So I force myself to go along with it because that's what I tend to do with Star Trek. Not because they're so bad at it, but because I like Star Trek enough that I do what Leonard Nimoy told people to do many decades ago, which is, where does Star Trek want to take me? And I let it. I'll criticize it to a degree after the fact, but for the most part, when I'm watching, I enjoy it because I'm not forcing it to make sense to my satisfaction. I will take what they give me, and then I will interpret it from there.
You could always say that the golem is that because we've got all these in this timeline, we've got all these advancements in holographic technology. They could always say that what you see is just a projection, and they could hit a couple of buttons and he can change. I mean, for all we know, what you see is just what Picard is projecting from his own mind. He could look into a mirror next season and we just see the golem, and that's what everybody sees.
Golem is a corrupted hobbit. A golem is what he has.
Okay.
We're already over halfway time. What if we talk about the next season of Discovery and the trailers for all the new Star Trek stuff?
One point I do want to make, we do have an out for John Delancey. We can always get Keegan Delancey.
Is that his son?
That's his son, who played Q Jr. And Keegan looks a lot like his father. So there's always a possibility we can always get Keegan to do it. So that
Rhett, I really hope you're trolling, because that is utter nonsense.
Oh yeah, look, just that's Rhett. That's what Rhett.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to those of you not familiar with Rhett, just accept it. Go on, do whatever you want. Anyway. Overall, I at this point, I'd rather just accept that this is what's happened with Picard, and now we're going to have a season 2, so we go from here. We work with what we're given and go from there. But again, I thoroughly enjoy Discovery, and that shocks me that I do, given my reaction to the first 5 or 6. You can ask Mark Adam. I was livid at the first 5. Those Klingons showed up. I was like, the hell is this? and yeah, I did not like. I didn't. They just seemed to be trashing continuity and so on and so forth. But you can also tell at the same time they felt the fan reaction and they got on a path to make it right or
They're
make it
working on it.
better.
They're
Yeah,
working.
and is it Sulak? The
Saru?
alien character?
Saru.
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 Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
Saru.
text
Yeah.
me.
Kelpian,
Saru.
yeah.
Saru is brilliant. Saru is Star Trek. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah,
Saru
in
is a
the
very good
path
character.
and everything, the development they've given him, and that actor is just positive. His movements, his delivery, everything is just
Well,
outstanding.
that's Doug Jones, and Doug Jones is a guy that you've probably seen a lot more often than you think you have.
Hellboy,
Yeah.
and yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was
Shape of
watching Elton
Water.
and
He was
looked at
brilliant in
guy.
that.
Oh, really?
Going back all the way to the 80s to play in Scott, what's the
Mac
moon
Tonight.
face character?
Mac
yeah.
Tonight.
Back tonight.
Mac
Yeah.
Tonight.
That thing was creepy as.
Yeah, it was.
It's too long of a walk to go get my Mac Tonight from my display cabinet and bring it up to camera. But there.
And
But yeah,
Jones
see,
was also that guy in
Pan's Labyrinth.
Pan's Labyrinth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Shape of Water. He was the creature in that.
Yeah.
Season 3 of Discovery is looking very interesting, and as far as I know, it's still going to happen this year. We're still going to get it in 2020. That at least that's what they announced at Comic-Con. They showed something, and at the end of it, the date still said 2020. So,
Well, they got all the principal photography done before the lockdown, so it's just post-production's going more slowly because it's everybody working from home instead of being able to go.
I think it's music. I think it's music that they're really hung up on, is they need to get the orchestra together to be able to record the score.
That was the
Time to
big
get the
holdup.
band back together.
The one big thing they still had left to do when the lockdown started was orchestration. And while it's technically possible to have musicians record remotely and then add it all in together, it really changes the sound versus having the entire orchestra in the same space and recording it live.
I've had a band that I was trying to get to be a guest on one of my quarantine panels. They said, we haven't figured out how to play together yet, but when we do, we'll come on. And yeah, that's a definite issue. Story-wise, I worry about season 3 that they're going to get too far away from Star Trek stuff and do their own do their own. I don't know. Maybe they've been too bound by continuity in that little window they had to fit in the first 2 seasons. And now they have none of that. So it's going to be weird. It's going to be weird to see the post-apocalypse Starfleet.
Yeah, especially since they're going to be going into a future where the Federation has changed so much that it's not the Federation that we know.
Yeah, it's just a handful of planets.
Yeah, so it looks to me like Michael is going to be kind of rebuilding the Federation. She's going to be one of the founding fathers, I guess, of the new version of the Federation, which is going to be interesting. It might
unless
be able to
unless this new Federation is corrupt and she has to tear it down.
And recreate it from scratch or whatever. So
there's one thing I'm nervous about, though, as far as Discovery going that far into the future, because ever since Nemesis, the most commonly heard complaint of any newer Star Trek is, why is everything going backwards? We had Enterprise going back to a century before TOS. We had Discovery going 10 years before TOS. A lot of people have been complaining, why do we keep going back? We want to see more stuff set post-Nemesis. Well, now with Discovery Season 3, everything that they make is going to be a prequel. Everything is going to be going back in time. And that's hyperbole. But at the same time, I suspect they're going to have to put in some type of a back door with Discovery Season 3 that will allow them, if necessary, to call it an alternate future. Because if they go into the 34th century, or the 32nd or 33rd. I can't keep track anymore. But if they go that far into the future and we see the fallout and the consequences of things that have happened since then, and then Picard season 4, something huge and galaxy-wide happens that they didn't account for in Discovery season 3, then we're going to have to come up with an explanation for, you know.
Well, I
Guardian
think
of
that there's
Forever.
enough time that they can just say, well, this is fallout from something that happened 500 years ago, and they're 1,000 years in the future.
It kind of goes back to the old Terminator line. In 100 years, is anyone actually going to care?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they could easily use that out. So,
Well, you've
You
got
know,
How many
you've got-
times?
Go ahead.
How
They
many
could always
times
use
did
the
you hear
Guardian of
anyone
Forever.
mention the giant? Oh, sorry.
They could always use the Guardian of Forever and fix everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, now
he-
that Harlan Ellison's dead, they might be able to.
exactly,
Ah,
exactly.
But
Yeah,
how many times have you heard anyone mention the giant canyon that was cut across Florida by the Zindi?
No.
You know,
Touche.
Star Trek forgets its past all the time,
Mhm.
Well,
or,
you-
or creates
they're
a new
trying to-
past and then doesn't care.
they're
Yeah.
trying to create a place where they can have several different series going on at the same time, and they don't want to get back to where they were when they had Deep Space Nine and Voyager happen, because those were happening at the same time. Now, granted, Voyager was way off in the Delta Quadrant, but when you've got a lot of shows or a lot of movies that are all happening in the same time period, then you got fanboys that are saying, well, why don't they just call so-and-so? You know, like in the MCU, when Iron Man gets into a scuffle, why doesn't
didn't
he
you
just call the Avengers? Yeah.
Yeah.
or whatever, because this is an Iron Man movie. It's not an Avengers movie, you know? So if you've got a lot of
We
Star
can't
Trek series
afford to
that are
pay
all
Downey
happening
anymore.
simultaneously, then you don't want to get to a point where it's just easy to be able to say, well, why doesn't Picard just call so-and-so to come and help him, because, you know, that show's going on. Well, we can have a crossover episode. You don't get into that when all your shows are taking place hundreds of years apart.
yeah.
So,
No, exactly.
which we've
But-
got Picard taking place in the time period that everybody's been complaining that they want a show to take place in, you know, post Nemesis.
And
Yeah.
and I was
Same amount
super
of-
glad to see it. I liked
Yeah.
seeing the updates to the aesthetic. I liked seeing the updates to the technology. And the reason I'm looking forward to season 2 of Picard more than I was looking forward to season 1 is thanks. You're going to hear this very rarely, especially from me. Thanks to the pandemic,
Oh.
they are now given the chance to get their entire season written, rewritten, edited, tightened up, trimmed, packaged, and ready to go before they start rolling camera on the first episode.
Mm.
They can get everything laid out, and they can answer all their questions, and they can close all their loopholes first and then start filming, rather than make it and then have to come up with explanations for it after the fact, like usually happens with television. They're being forced into the premium television position, rather like Watchmen, which I loved on HBO. They're writing it first and then making it, so they don't have to make any retroactive fixes later in the season.
Scott, are you actually suggesting that Star Trek writers and showrunners are going to have a plan?
From what I've heard, from
No,
interviews
I'm just
that I've
playing.
heard,
Yeah,
and
I'd
what-
be all for that.
And while I'm pretty sure that was a joke, there's also not a terrible point in there. That there's not always the greatest track record for Star Trek writers having a plan in place beforehand. But from what I've heard, they are in fact trying to use this opportunity to work ahead, to get some of their homework done before it's assigned.
Yeah.
And
I think that'd be great.
I like hearing that that's what they're trying to do, rather than just taking a vacation, just waiting, spending more time getting new effects technology ready. No, spend your time on the writing. That's what's always most important to Star Trek fans, is not what the effects look like, but how it's written. Spend your time there.
Well, that's been
Star
problem
Trek
with
needs a
all-
J. Michael Straczynski.
But that's been a problem with all
Yes.
television shows from infinitum. They're doing these on quick basis and trying to get them out quickly. and they really don't sit down and say, okay, let's plan it, because they don't know how long the TV show is going to be. They can hope for a 5-year run, but sometimes they get 1 season, sometimes they get 3, sometimes you get a half a season like Firefly.
We've got about 9 minutes left. So Star Trek Picard has not only been a continuation of the Next Generation, because it's bringing back Captain Picard, the arguably the main character of the Next Generation, but it's also a continuation of the entire franchise, because we brought back characters like Seven. We saw what happened to Icheb and all of that. What character from any of Star Trek, TNG, DS9, Voyager, that era, what character would you like to see return for an episode? Maybe not have the entire series, but just have an episode where this character shows up. And how do you think you would work that in there?
I have 2.
We got to figure out how to work it in there. I'd love to see Quark, but I don't know how you would work it in there.
Well, Quark already, he owns a bar on that
He's
Vegas
already
plant.
there.
Yeah, his name was on the sign, so.
That's true. That's true.
But I want some, I guess, in my head canon, Crusher and Picard ended up together after TNG was over, and clearly we see, well, that probably didn't happen. But so I want Gates McFadden back to do something, and I would also like, speaking of the Crusher family, since Will Wheaton is already in the building doing the after show, let's fix Wesley Crusher somehow.
Fix him.
Oh,
I don't know how.
Yeah, I want to see him fix him, but probably not the same way you do.
We don't want little Wesley Crusher's running around, so let's get him fixed.
I don't know how they're going to do it, but that's just kind of dangling out there, and there's so much stuff that I would fix. I don't know. Of course, I really want Worf to come back too, but there we go.
Virginia says don't speak of Sub Rosa. So.
Yeah, I agree with Virginia. We do not speak of Sub Rosa. I don't think that Wesley is really a character that needs to get fixed. Honestly, I think he's gotten a bad rap over the years. It's not that Will Wheaton did a bad job. It's not that Wesley was a bad character. It's just how young characters like that were written in the late 80s and early 90s. Yeah. He was a victim of the writing. And they gave him a great setup when they sent him off with the Traveler later on in the series. And we saw him pop up in Nemesis, although they cut any scene where he was actually speaking. So if they wanted to bring him back, then that's just some quick character rehab. It's like, look, I grew up and I'm more mature now because I was a freaking pubescent last time you saw me. That's why I was so annoying, but not anymore. See, Mom? And then she'll be like, yes, son, you're way cooler now. And then everyone will be happy. Though I agree with Joe, I would love to see Worf again. The 2 characters I would like to see pop up just to check in with them are Worf, because he's got more episodes than any other character between TNG and Deep Space Nine. I also want a checkup with Geordi. From the sounds of it, we're going to get that, and I want to see Geordi pop up and see where he's at.
Rhett wants to know if the character that Denise Crosby played is still alive. It depends on which character you're talking about.
We haven't seen her Romulan version die in continuity.
Tasha died, but then an alternate version of Tasha she went back to the past and served on the Enterprise C. I think that if you're going to extend this whole AI civil rights thing and bring it into dealing with not only androids but also holograms, and you've already got Seven there, I think it would make a lot of sense for the Doctor to show up. And maybe he's at the forefront of that. He could be. What was the name of the holo novel that he wrote? It was like Holograms Be Free or something. Yeah.
Sela was
he could be a famous writer now or something.
Sela was the Romulan officer.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to retcon Star Trek Nemesis and go back in time where we find out that the Traveler was a bastard Q that had been excommunicated from the continuum and was using Wesley to find a way to destroy the continuum. And then we start from there forward. So that's the two characters. I
Then
want
you
to
get
see,
into
but we
the
have to
argument
retcon
of
everything.
if the continuum is quote unquote God, then if the continuum falls, then does all reality fall with them?
If the Spock Q tapes are in continuity, they're not necessarily God, but they're godlike.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What does Q need with a starship?
Yeah. What does God want with my starship? So other than that, the ribbon is still out there. There's got to be an aspect of Kirk in it, so we could always get him.
Ooh, come on, unkilling. Now, what would it be great if in Discovery they get there, it's 1,000 years in the future, and there's William Shatner. Ha ha!
Exactly.
I've been waiting on you people.
There's a thing that we don't really talk about a whole lot. And Kristen, I know we've only got 3 minutes. I'm about to close up, but Michelle Yeoh's character in Discovery.
Section 31. Yeah.
Which one?
Giorgio.
Which one?
The one that's still alive.
Okay.
She went to the future with them, but she's still listed as being part of the Section 31 show that's eventually going to start. So there has to be some sort of time travel again to get her back, unless that show just doesn't happen, which it may not. They may be taking what they were going to put into 31 and changing it to Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, because that's one thing. They've got Strange New Worlds coming up, and to me, what I've been reading, it sounds like Section 31's on a back burner.
Yeah.
Well, like Virginia just said, Section 31 in the future, but also Shazad Latif is supposed to be in the Section 31 show.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, there's 930 years between the two characters.
Right. Yeah.
Section
Yeah. That's what
931.
Yeah, because Ash is supposed to be part of that as well, and he's still in the past. So I don't know. We'll see how that happens. But I guess we need to close everything up. We'll take a quick minute, everybody, and let everybody know where they can find your stuff. Scott?
I can be found on the Cosmic Potato Podcast Network, hosting my show, The Prime Direction. You can find that on Twitter at Prime Direct Pod. You can find my graphic artwork on Twitter at Planet Rise, or you can visit my graphic art website, www.planetrisecreative.com.
Rick?
You can find me at starbasecommand.net. You can find all the podcasts I do, Starbase 66, Open the Iris, Infinite Diversity, and Technobabble.
Stan?
Kingdom Casts podcast. Me and Albert Marsh talk about anything and everything, and Albert usually disagrees with most of it. Just look us up on your podcast app.
Mark Adam?
You can find me at Facebook, USS Hephaestus, HEPHAESTUS. You can't remember Hephaestus, just Google Greek god for Vulcan.
Okay. Joe?
Facebook.com/groups/American Sci-Fi Classics. And on the socials media things, I'm at Yojo Crow and Classic Track.
And I am all over the place at CosmicPotatoNetwork.com. And everybody, thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Kristen, thank you for having us. Everybody, make sure you enjoy the rest of the con. And I'm just glad it's still happening, even though we can't all be together. So.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys very, very much.
See, Kristen, I was nice.
And I'm very proud of you. I'll see some of you guys in a little while. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.